So now for something completely different. My name's Rob. I work at Adobe. Thank you, Kevin, for that introduction. And I'm using my platform at this AI conference to give a talk about art history. Because this is my job. I'm looking out in the audience. I can see, like, yeah, it's your job too, right? I could talk about this all day long. You have heard about this all day long. I figured, you know, it's Friday, it's almost 5 o'clock, sun's setting. Let's try something completely different here. There are two reasons that I chose this topic for my talk. The first is the original venue for this conference was supposed to be the Computer History Museum over in Mountain View. So I figured, you know, it's a history museum. I could give a history talk. That would work out well. And then it moved to Plug and Play. So that's no longer valid. But secondly, I work at this company called Adobe that is very deeply connected to a community of artists who use our products. Here are a few of them. You may have heard of some of these. Here are some more. I can't even name all of these. But we've retired more than what you see up here. Now, as a company, we have to embrace new technologies like generative AI, while also playing this tricky role of trying to bring our customers along for the ride. And there is definitely some resistance from artists who use Adobe's tools to create their art, to generative AI. And then there are some digital artists who absolutely love it and have embraced it. So today I'm going to show you that this tension has existed for literally centuries, and it's part of a story that is played out in basically the same way over and over again. Okay. This is an abbreviated history of technology and art. You can see over there on the left, you have paper in the 2nd century BCE going all the way up through generative AI, text, image, and video more recently. In all of these cases, these technologies have influenced and in some cases completely disrupted art. There's a longer version of this talk where I dive deep into movable type, the printing press, photography, cinema, all the way up through generative AI, but we don't have time to talk about all of those. Grab me later, find me on LinkedIn. I will talk your ear off about this stuff if you are interested. So today, I'm just gonna focus on photography and generative AI, but I will note that with respect to technology's relationship to art, what you see with all of these technologies here is this familiar playbook that is followed, and it follows 3 phases. First, you have the development of and experimentation with the technology. Now, at this point, technology is being created. Artists probably are not even aware of it because they don't read technical journals or go to computer science conferences. Why would they? Their job is to create art. They're busy doing that. In the second phase, up to 3. In the second phase, we use the new technology to copy what we already know how to do. And this is what makes artists mad. To paint them with a very broad brush, they might say something akin to, that's not art. That new thing you're doing, that's not art. What I do is art. They learned their craft in a very specific way, using very specific tools. And when a radically different technique like generative AI comes along, it may seem so unusual and alien to them that they wouldn't even recognize the end product as being art. Then in phase 3, the technology is refined to a point where we can stop copying and start doing brand new things. This is when new art forms and new types of artists emerge. So to reiterate, develop, copy, and pioneer. Those are our 3 phases of technological adoption in art. Now, in order to reach phase 3, artists need to answer this question. What can we do with this technology that has not been done before? And by the way, these phases are definitely not temporally distinct. They overlap a lot in time. Right now, with generative AI art, I'd say we are definitely still heavily rooted in phase one, while also experiencing the early stages of phase two. We're using the nascent technology to copy what we can already do. For example, an AI-generated image that wins an art competition, like that top one there. Or this was popular a little while ago, people recreating movie scenes using generative AI that are from the hand-drawn style of Studio Ghibli. They've denounced this, by the way. And then finally, does anyone recognize her down there?
Yes.
Yeah, who's that?
Yes, it's the virtual AI-generated actress.
Yeah, right. So that's a collection of pixels called Tilly Norwood. It is available to appear in your movie, just like you would insert a dinosaur into Jurassic Park. You can insert Tilly Norwood into your movie if you wish to. So, like, we already have these things. Like, we have painting, we have animation, we have actors. So right now, we are just copying things, but we're not yet at this stage where we can do something radically new. Toward the end of the talk, I'll talk about a couple of ideas for what phase 3 might look like in generative AI. But for now, let us focus on photography. This is believed to be the very first photograph. It was created in 1827 in France by Joseph Liebscher. Producing this image took about 8 to 10 hours of concentrating light on a chemically treated plate. It's a view from a second-story window. If you squint, you can kind of make out a roof in the middle, maybe a building on the left and right. Perhaps there in the back, that's a tree. Here, let me help you out. This is an AI restoration of what that view may have looked like. In 1839 came the daguerreotype process. Some of you have probably heard of daguerreotypes, invented by Louis Daguerre, also in France, which became the first commercially viable form of photography because it only took about 3 to 15 minutes to create a photograph instead of 8 to 10 hours. And as you can see, the fidelity was much better. This is one of the earliest surviving photographs of the daguerreotype process. And once again, it's a view out of a window. So now, at this point in time, people could point a machine at a scene and capture that visually without having to draw or paint it, which in 1839 must have seemed indistinguishable from magic. It took a few more decades of technological development before photography to catch on, and when painters and art critics began to take notice, they said things like, "This industry, by invading the realm of art, has become art's most mortal enemy." So here the poet Baudelaire is using industry as a pejorative to indicate that photography it's just a mechanical process. It's not art. It's an invasive species. Photography does not and never will raise us to the contemplation of any spiritual truth. From an anonymous critic, those were not invented by the internet. We had them in 1863. Photographs seem to be unendurably inadequate and false, whereas my own drawings are tolerably true. Typically, when the words true and false are used with respect to art, it's like, yeah, that's kind of a reach. For many painters, they kind of went they went to the extreme. This is from the painter Paul Delaroche. As soon as he saw the first daguerreotype, he said, "From today, painting is dead." Now, it's 186 years later after he said that, and people still paint today, and they still draw. Those things are still popular, but Delaroche could not have seen that. So these are fun. Let's do a few more. Photography is like tavern food. It fills a need, but it's not nourishing. Removing people from the process of making artwork, just relying on a machine takes the art out of that creation. The camera is just a duplicating machine. It doesn't create, it regurgitates. So I think by now you get the point that plenty of artists are offended by the very existence of photography. Not only are they afraid of losing their jobs, being replaced by this machine, but they believe somehow that this new technology will ruin the sanctity of their art and delegitimize their chosen profession. But the interesting thing about these quotes is that they're not actually from the mid-1800s. They're from 2 to 3 years ago. Fooled you? Okay. And they're not about photography. They're about AI art. I did take a couple of liberties here. Like I had to change fast food to tavern food, but you get the point. Sentiment is still the same. With the second one on the right, I didn't have to change a single word, right? It's the same sentiment. So what you're seeing here over a separation of nearly 2 centuries between photography and generative AI is basically the same story. Back to our 3 phases. Initially, photography was used to just copy what painters were doing. That's why you get the complaints from painters. Some examples, we have still life, a portrait, a landscape. These are from the dawn of photography. That one in the middle there is the world's first selfie of Robert Cornelius in 1839. Painters had been doing these for centuries. But it was going to take a new breed of artists to invent the art of photography and move beyond phase 2 into phase 3. But they had to wait for the technology to sufficiently develop to make that possible. So eventually, camera technology progressed far enough to allow for 2 things. 1, very quick exposure times, and 2, portability. With these refinements, photography eventually became about capturing a moment in time. So in particular, moments that couldn't be drawn or painted except from memory, and that's an unreliable source of visual information. So photography as an art form needed this refined technology from the camera in order to get to phase 3. Now, something interesting happened with painting as well. Photography didn't kill it, as it turned out. A new generation of painters grew up with commercially viable photography in their world, and they stopped trying to capture what the photographers were now doing, which is just taking pictures of visual scenes, and they began painting what they could see only in their mind's eye. So this led to the development of numerous schools of painting, including the ones you see here. None of these scenes can be captured with a camera. New forms of expression through the medium of painting evolved in response to the technology of the camera. And art as a whole, with both painting and photography, was better off for it. Now, with generative AI, whether it's creation of images, movies, text, video, sound effects, music, whatever, right now we're still just copying what a digital artist can do, what an animator can do, what an actor can do. We haven't yet entered the phase of new forms of artistic expression, and part of this is because we have this groundbreaking technology, but it's still in its infancy. So nonetheless, I can see some directions that art could go in the future when generative AI becomes evolved more, and they can't be accomplished without generative AI. So I'll give you a couple examples here. First, the holodeck. Was anyone here for Ian McKendrick's talk? Yeah, I can't believe this is the second time a holodeck is being mentioned today. So briefly, this is a staple in science. Actually, I think he used the same picture too in the upper left. This is a staple in science fiction that goes by many names, but I think the best illustration of the concept comes from Star Trek: The Next Generation. Imagine a virtual world that feels just as real as the real world, has virtual settings and characters in it that you can interact with in real time. You're not an observer of the art, you become part of the art. I'm not sure which century it'll be when we get there, but I'm hoping maybe there'll be a primitive version of it sometime in my lifetime, but yeah, we'll see. What I do know is that it's definitely impossible without massive improvements in generative AI and massive computing power. So this is an example of generative AI as an art form getting to phase 3, using the technology for new forms of artistic expression that were previously not possible. So this next one I call targeted art. For the past couple of decades, we've gleefully surrendered our personal information and our behavioral patterns online to companies. For what purpose? To sell us products, right? This collage, you can tell, was made with generative AI because we're still in phase 1 with regard to trying to understand what language is, at least in a pixel sense. So that's okay, phase 1, that will improve. And by the way, I'm not denigrating this at all. My company is in the business of doing this. If I have to see ads, I'd much rather they be for products that I might actually want to purchase. But so we've had this programmatic personalized ad tech for a couple of decades now. And what I'm thinking is, like, instead of using all of our data to create ads, what if we were able to create a personally targeted artistic experience that is not designed to get you to buy a product, but instead designed to overwhelm you with awe or move you to tears or change the course of your life or any other reaction that great art is able to evoke? I'll share with you a few pieces of art that have moved me, a few personal examples. This unusual painting goes by the name of The Gold Scab, Eruption in Filthy Lucre, the Creditor. It's by James Whistler. You can go see this up in the De Young Museum in San Francisco. I came around a corner like 10 to 15 years ago and saw this, and it just like absolutely froze me in place. I went home, read all about it. The story is even more interesting than the painting. The Planets is an orchestral suite that I've seen performed many, many times, and it still moves me every time I listen to it. The Deluge is a book. It's a 900-page novel that kept me up all night last year when I began reading it, and I still think about it almost every day. So these are 3 works of art in 3 different media from 3 different centuries. Art is deeply personal. I am probably the only person in the world who is affected by this particular trio of works of art in the way I am affected by it, and I definitely cannot explain why these things impact me the way that they do, and thousands of other works of art do not. But I bet a machine learning model that knew everything about me probably could explain it, and I bet it could be combined with generative AI to create a work of art that resonated specifically with me, a work of art that wasn't pre-existing but was bespoke and created on the spot to make me experience a sense of wonder or make me laugh until it hurts or any other reaction that great art is able to evoke. So when generative AI becomes mature enough, a new generation of artists is going to stop copying what we're doing in phase 2 and start creating a holodeck or personalized works of art. We're not there yet, but we will definitely get there. And those are just two examples of phase 3, using the technology to do something we could not do without it. But I think the most interesting forms of art that'll come out of generative AI are probably ones that we have not even imagined yet. And I'm pretty sure that they will come from young people who are growing up with the technology and who won't feel limited by yesterday's artistic boundaries. Thank you.